Yay, today I got flagged for promoting hate speech and hate groups while denouncing them. Status quo. Just answering questions with WAPTech from another channel and also this one. Because on the other channel it's two other subjects, and let's just get something over here. I want police to pull a tower dump and geofence of areas. I'm also wondering if satellites could be used to see the area at a specific location on a specific night or time. Do you know anything about accessing satellite data for specific date and addresses? Like some NASA sites seem to be focused on. Weather pages. I'm learning to run queries that could be useful, but it's difficult on a phone, and I can't afford a laptop. I think I need to find a way. You need to buy yourself a cheap computer. Stop saying a laptop, cell phone, blah, blah, blah. Just find a cheap computer that is easy to work on. I'm recommending PCs because doing it on Macs forces you to upgrade and be stymied. Don't use software like Photoshop, where it decides after the fact to turn off abilities you've had for years or stuff you paid for. There's a whole rant there. And yes, eventually I'm going to have to do that damn video where I explain to people how to set up a machine that won't let a website turn off your features, because they keep doing that. Did I mention I got censored today for debunking something and denigrating bad guys and get told that I was promoting them? If there was some logic to it, it'd be great, but I literally cannot figure out what they were doing. Anyway, let's go on. As this would all be based on the equipment belonging to any combination of a company, individual, country, municipality, or even a despot, and that's including stuff in orbit and the antennas up the street, because we have a mixture on this planet of private and public ownership of telecommunications equipment, and on the technical details of them not really providing any information after a certain date and time, unless you access their market research data, which they guard heavily because they don't want to know that they're spying on us. They don't want us to be able to prove that in court. I would need bare minimum a time frame that you're looking for and a zip code for satellite data, tower data. And the geofencing reference, I'm not really sure what that's referring to, but that's cool as well. I'd also need to know what end result or what kind of data you were looking for. It cannot be a dragnet. Now, the reason for this is based on two ideas. It's technically easier, depending on the system, to access all of the data, dragnet style, or specific data. Even if it's been obfuscated and anonymized to make sure that your identity and mine has been cleaned up, you can still create a profile, but you have to be very specific. Next, privacy. Accessing the information with the intended screw-ups that happen means that you'd be accessing people's information that you weren't allowed to get a summons or a writ or a subpoena for. And that's the other thing. You'd have to get the police department or the FBI to do it, and they'd have to want to give a damn. Private citizens aren't able to access this for the same reason that myself, as a computer security hacker, can't access Bill Gates so I can send him a noogie or have a python in his face. You wouldn't want this to be available to everybody about you, so it can't be available about anybody to you. That's how the rules work. But, starting point, if I know the zip code and I know what kind of data, I might find out, oh, it's a Cricket phone or it's a Boost mobile phone. Boost mobile phones carry tracking data integrally. All Nextel phones do. The Nextel company, if it's really Nextel or it's one of them that they have a contract with, has a privacy contract rule where a person, I was in the position of doing this, can be used to do the subpoena. You can also just pay the money if you can confirm in some way you had direct non-tangential control over the data. Good example is, if it's a relative's phone you're trying to track, you can own that. You can request the court give you ownership as a private citizen to get the information, because even the legal system might have trouble subpoenaing it. They could just tell the court, my relative was kidnapped or killed or whatever. Nobody wants to investigate it because I'm living in Mexico or whatever. Will you give me a writ or permission that says that I'm allowed to demand it? And if they refuse it, I can't go through the court, but I can take them to court and in a civil case force fuck them into giving me the data. As for satellites, any satellite that might pick up the data could be from a company that doesn't like the United States, a company run by evil despots, a company run by something worse, Elon Musk, or it could be, some random hunk of equipment was thrown up there by the Russians when they were feeling generous and left up. I don't know. And this all could be a combination that can happen no matter what data you're looking up. The only satellites set that are part of the GPS series or the constellation set that might have been able to get the accurate information are required to smooth the data and give more approximate data depending on how old they are at first. But the raw data may be very precise and totally wrong. All of these have too many variables. Now, I had a video I was going to put up called Are Conspiracy Theories False by Definition? Because this came from a discussion that's still up, as far as I can tell, on Wikipedia. Now, I'm going to include that in here because I was going to post this someplace, and it became a note. By the way, I have a bunch of videos I'd rather do, but I can't because they're not complete, or honestly, I just don't care anymore. I'm getting to the point that YouTube's chronic abuse of us uploaders is actually working. They're also doing it by making the website not load correctly, deliberately sending reset packets so your internet connection goes to shit for 5 minutes. They're doing everything they can if you're not paying them your YouTube premium money. Oh, did you know that apparently Elon Musk on Twitter was at least bandying about the idea of charging people $20 a month to be considered a verified account? And everything terrible people predicted about it when Elon Musk touched everything actually happened? Yeah. But anyway, let's go on to, are conspiracy theories always false by definition? The answer is no. A conspiracy theory has a neutral understanding meaning, but people don't want to use the word conspiracy theory because it has now a negative connotation. The first in-print usage of the term conspiracy theory, those two words put together like that, as an expression, at all, that we can find. It's the oldest, it doesn't mean it's the first. Was by American author Charles Astor Bristed in 1863. January 11th, New York Times, page 3, a letter to the editor titled English Insincerity on the Slavery Question. And in it, he questioned the trope of all-powerful British aristocrats, even existing anymore, having an effect in the United States. Well, they did have influence, but that's it. It didn't carry any negative or positive connotation. It was about people preferring to make up a theory of conspiracy, or as he called it, conspiracy theory, rather than a theory of what is actually happening. They were ignoring reality and looking for, could it be this, that, and they were all doing the just answering questions kind of thing, or just asking questions thing that's used so often. Now, conspiracy theory also, as a wording, became a subject of a conspiracy theory that claimed the CIA popularized the term in 1964, literally 100 years after the damned expression came out. It's almost exactly 100 years later. It's 101 years old to that time, saying that the Warren Commission critics were being called conspiracy theorists, and that's when it was invented and coined. Now, the fact that this is, you can actually click the link below and look at the article, look at the entry. And of course, the new conspiracy theory is, they planted that story in the New York Times literally 100 years before we decided this happened. Because conspiracy theories are based on creating a non-falsifiable set of assertions and an attitude or mindset that you can't tell me that. You can't disprove me. That expression people say, you can't tell me. That's a conspiracy theorist waiting to happen. Because now it has a negative connotation because almost all of these kind of people, a personality type, are obsessed with or fixate on any explanation that can't be double-checked. The Twin Towers were hit by airplanes. They caught on fire because the planes had fuel in them. The fuel lit the material in the buildings on fire. Any fire like that gets to a temperature where the metal is at or above annealing temperature and then goes through the temperature where it becomes softened to where it can no longer hold really almost any weight at all if it's applied to it. That includes stretching it, squeezing it, bending it, warping it in any way. This has been demonstrated by experiment after experiment too many motherfucking times for someone to ignore it. So they do it anyway. Because part of this mindset then goes to the level of, you can't tell me, to you can't prove anything to me because nothing in reality ever matches what I believe. Therefore, either I'm completely wrong and need to start over, which they won't do because they're lazy, or I will ignore reality. And that's what we run into. So, concerning criticism of the Warren Report is a mentioning of the word conspiracy theory in the 1960s. It was released later in the 1970s because it was a hidden document, which is also not really helpful, is it? But anyway, it wasn't invented to discredit Warren Commission critics or anything else in the 1960s. It was a term that was coined, or at least popular enough to be used once in print, in the 1860s. And by the way, unsubstantiated claims show it being used as an expression in multiple languages in exactly the same form as conspiracy theory and conspiracy theorist before this, maybe as early as 1700s. But there's no confirmation of it because it had to be somebody writing about it and it being confirmed. But we can say that the wording was absolutely available and understood by 1863. So no, it wasn't created by the CIA specifically or tangentially to harm critics of the Warren Report or to be part of the JFK cover-up idea. It's not an invention of the CIA. It was part of the vernacular in multiple languages by 1860. Saying the opposite of that is an example of, and a perfect example, circular reasoning type example of a conspiracy theorist being wrong. And that's the next stage. Are conspiracy theories wrong? The conspiracy theory is the CIA created this or exploited this term. That's the actual real one. To denigrate people by labeling them for ridicule. It didn't help that a lot of them were already being ridiculed because they kept coming up with alternative theories that became more and more strained because a lot of these critics were getting famous and being able to go on, like, junkets or whatever, maybe even being on TV eventually. And they had a financial incentive not to tell the truth anymore. The Warren Commission, if you're not aware of it, I think the JFK report is a sloppy bit of work. But by accident, which is always how these buffoons do it, they really did get it basically right. A person who was highly angry about shit happening to Castro and Cuba, a young activist, got angry at the president, left an incredibly easy trail to check, leading him to the rifle that he had in his hands, and he shot the president. The gun was dropped after he fired it. It damaged the lenses in the optics. And people, including myself, have demonstrated that the Carcano, I call it that, is not a shitty cartridge. It's not a shitty gun that it was fired from. And the chambering is not inaccurate. And yeah, you can make those shots. You don't even have to practice much. In fact, not aware of it, some people who'd never touched the gun in any time in their life were able to make those shots in that timing or faster. After 3 or 4 times, they could get it easy. Lee Harvey Oswald could have just practiced these shots somewhere random with melons or something. He worked in the building. He knew where to make his little sniper's nest. He might have arranged it days or weeks beforehand. Conspiracy theories have frequently thrown suspicion on our organization. For example, by falsely alleging Lee Harvey Oswald worked for us, CIA. That was really that's the only time it was mentioned. It was never mentioned after, and it was not mentioned. We need to weaponize this. This is the primary or only reference anybody's referring to, and they don't read it to you. They just say, "Oh yeah, the CIA exploited or invented this term." Well, they didn't invent it, and whether they exploited it or not, you don't have any proof in that one sentence there. It's the only time it's mentioned. The impotence that drives folks like me to seek out unique intelligence sources for the veracity and common sense investigation we desire is from the realization that much of what passes for news reporting these days is little more than a game of telephone, with each telling rendering more impotent as a tissue of lies. That's my creative retelling of somebody's posting on the channel. Are conspiracy theories by definition false? No, but when we say it's a conspiracy theory, we have to be careful and say it's a conspiracy theorist's false theory. We should emphasize that because some conspiracy theories turn out to be completely true. Most of them don't. And any of them that won't let you check them, that aren't based on facts, that are not falsifiable, that don't let you have the ability to disprove them, I always consider them false by default. But sometimes I'm wrong. Sometimes so are you. Thanks for watching. Have a good day. Good luck with that.